For at least one of the Muslim countries, there appears to be substantial support. Where do they stand? Well, they have their own organizations called the OIC, the Organization of the Islamic Conference. And it's 57 nations. And all of them endorsed the two-state settlement, including the Islamic Republic of Iran. In fact, the Islamic Republic of Iran has been voting with the majority in the UN since the mid-2000s, every year. Now, Mr. Obama, our president, the stupefying narcissist with his eternal speechifying, he gave a speech recently at the United Nations with his soaringly insipid rhetoric, and he said to the Arabs that it was time already for them to establish normal relations with Israel. That was the phrase he used. But Mr. Obama, you're a little bit behind the times, because the Arab Peace Initiative of 2002, Google it yourself, Google the phrase, establish normal relations. That phrase was in the Arab Peace Initiative. They said, we're ready to establish normal relations if you agree to international law, namely withdraw from the territories you're occupying and a just resolution of the refugee question. So Mr. Obama was lecturing to the wrong side, not for the first time. The problem is not the stubbornness and the recalcitrance of the Arabs or the Muslims. The problem is that country in the negative column, namely Israel, backed by Mr. Obama. Now, the second representative of the Pakistani nation, about which I'll have a lot more to say in a moment, as you'll see. I'm going to ask you a tougher question. Now, it might be unfair because if you're Pakistani, you are probably an engineering major. Am I correct? So that's typical. Did I say something wrong? No. I know, believe me. Okay, where's your major? Finance. What would you rank as, this is tough. I don't know why your foot is shaking, I'm asking him. What is, you would call the most respected legal body in the world? We'll allow for a conference, go ahead. What? Good. Good for you. That one gets applause. Especially for a Florida student. No, just couldn't resist, even at the risk of alienating some of you. I can't resist the joke. That's why I'm unemployed. Okay. Well, as it happens, in July 2004, under circumstances which would not enable me, the time doesn't allow me to go into, the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, it too had to rule on some basic questions having to do with the Israel-Palestine conflict. And they too said that Israel has no right to any of the West Bank, Gaza, or East Jerusalem. Those are occupied Palestinian territories. That the West Bank, Gaza, and East Jerusalem are the designated unit of self-determination for the Palestinians, and that all the settlements in the occupied Palestinian territories, all 500,000 settlers, that they are illegally situated there. So, the ICJ, the most respected body in the world, we know that by courtesy of you, and I think that's a correct answer, it joins with the most representative body of the world. Again, the vote, every single member, there are 15 judges on that court. Not a single one, not one, dissented on these questions. There was a dissent on another question, but not on these questions. Even the American judge, a fellow by the name of Thomas Bergenthal, who also happens to be Jewish and a bona fide survivor of the Nazi Holocaust, even he said, I have to agree. The settlements are illegal under international law, Article 49 of the Fourth Geneva Convention. Now, listen up, because what does that tell you? In the United States, we're told that the reason these negotiations are so difficult, the reason they've gone on so long, is because they involve very controversial questions. For example, one, what are the borders of Israel? What are the borders of a Palestinian state? Two, are the settlements legal or illegal? Three, to whom does East Jerusalem belong? And there's a fourth question, which I'll get to in a moment, namely the refugee question. But on the questions I just went through, there's no controversy at all. If you leave out Palau and Nauru, there's no controversy at all. Everyone agrees that there are two states there, one of which forms the borders of the state of Israel, the other of which belongs to the Palestinians, the whole of the West Bank, the whole of Gaza, and East Jerusalem, and there has to be a just resolution of the refugee question. On the refugee question, too, you'll be surprised to learn there is no controversy. So, if I were to ask Pakistani number 3, whose leg was shaking and is now again palpitating, can you name me one of the most respected human rights organizations in the world? You would name Amnesty, okay? Can you name the second? Yes, you can. You're not giving yourself a chance. I am making you tongue-tied. Who wants to assist his fellow human being in an hour of trial and judgment? Yes. Yes. Red Cross would be classified as a humanitarian organization because it provides material aid. Human rights organizations usually focus on violations of the laws of war and all that sort of. Yes?
I didn't hear the first one, but Human Rights Watch, if you already mentioned Amnesty International.
That's correct. The two are Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch. They are the largest and the most influential now in the world. Can we agree on that? Anyone wants to disagree? If you do, Mr. Obama might assassinate you. Even if you are an American citizen, because that's the only way he can get reelected. tell the truth. Is right. Well, both Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International have expressed their opinion on the refugee question. So, you said Amnesty? Amnesty says, now I'm quoting them, "We call for Palestinians who fled or were expelled from Israel, the West Bank, or Gaza Strip, along with those of their descendants who have maintained genuine links with the area, to be able to exercise their right of return." One of the two leading human rights organizations in the world. The second, Human Rights Watch, it says, "We urge Israel to recognize the right to return for those Palestinians and their descendants who fled from territory that is now within the state of Israel, who have maintained appropriate links with that territory." Both human rights organizations, the two major ones. There's no controversy in the real world on these questions. Now, during those peace negotiations the past decade or so, Ms. Livni, she was the foreign minister during the massacre of Gaza in 2008-9. She's now the head of one of Israel's main parties called Kadima. She's a bona fide war criminal of the first rank. The British recently changed their laws on war criminals, or modified their laws on war criminals, to allow her entry to the UK on the principle that if you are a wholesale murderer, that is a head of state, you get a free pass, and if you are a retail murderer, you get the electric chair. That's called justice and civilization. In any case, she said at one point in the negotiations, she said, "I am a lawyer, but I am against law, international law in particular." Now, it would be more accurate to say that Livni was against international law because she was a lawyer, because she knows that on these questions, the so-called controversial questions, borders, Jerusalem, settlements, refugees, she knows the international law is unambiguous, and that based on the law, the Israelis have not a leg to stand on. What about Palestinians? There's no dispute in the real world. There's no dispute in the real world that the Palestinian Authority has supported the two-state consensus and the just resolution of the refugee questions for decades now. As a matter of fact, they've been willing to accept far less than that in order to settle the conflict.